All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I know that Sunday afternoon is probably not the ideal time for everyone to have to give up an hour or two extra, especially because you guys are the ones that are already serving in other areas. But I didn't really know when a good time is to do something like this, so hopefully this works for you and you did get the benefit of pizza. And so that's good for most of you. Some of you who are gluten-free or dairy-free or whatever else free, I apologize. But it looks like you're still eating, so that's good. All right, so what we want to do today is we're hoping to do some volunteer worker training. And so if you are working with anybody from the ages of 0 to 18 in the church, this is something that we think is very important as a church for you to go through. We think it's incredibly important to protect our children, and our insurance company wants us to do things like this on a fairly regular basis, just so everybody is aware of the policies and procedures at our church, how you should follow. And the truth is, I know that a meeting like this is not something you look forward to. It's not something I look forward to either, but there's a few ways we could go through this. We could go through it as if like, okay, this is a necessary evil, so let's get it done. We can go through it like, yeah, at least we get pizza. Or we can go through it and say like, maybe there's a way that I could actually learn something today. And maybe there's something that I'm not doing that I should be doing. And I hope that you'll just decide, since you're here, to decide to be the people who are like, I'm going to try and learn something. I'm going to try and figure out how I can do the service that I'm already a part of in a better way, in a way that is more provides more protection for the children and for yourself, and in a way that hopefully better aligns with what our church is trying to accomplish, okay? So that's my goal today. I know that youth ministry is often very unthankful work. Yeah, I know that you probably spend many mornings in the nursery or evenings in the nursery or times in the kids club or times in the youth group, and you feel like, did this accomplish anything at all? Like, I just watched other people's kids cry for an hour or 2 hours straight. I feel like I didn't really accomplish something wonderful in the service of the Lord. And I just want to encourage you that it is important. Youth ministry is very important. It's vital to the church. All right? When you're doing this, you're doing a few things. First of all, you're pouring into the kids' lives. You're showing them that you love them. And it's good for them to know that their church family loves them. And other people are willing to sacrifice their opportunity to hear preaching in order to show them love. Okay? Now, they won't understand all of that immediately, but as they grow up and as they get asked to be a part of service, there's a lot of teenagers that are here today getting the training. And they're starting to realize that it takes a lot to have a youth program like we do and to have nurseries like we do. So you are showing the kids already that you love them. And the second thing you're doing is you're allowing parents to sit under the preaching, the teaching of the Word of God, and that's vitally important. And so we hope that while you're changing their diapers, God is working in the hearts of their parents to help them to be closer to Christ and better parents and all those other things. And so it is incredibly important. I have a few verses that I want to begin with that hopefully will set the tone to what we're trying to accomplish in our youth and in this meeting. The first one is 1 Corinthians 10:31, just says, whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. And so we need to remember that in this, whatever ministry you're part of, the goal is to do whatever we do to the glory of God, right? And so you can be a nursery worker or a kids club leader to the glory of God, even when it's tough, even when the kids are terrible, you can do it. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, prove all things, hold fast to that which is good, abstain from appearance of evil. And I think that's another important verse just to remind us of that our desire is to prove or to test or to figure out what's right, what's best in all things. And then when we do that, we hold fast to what's good. And so we use the best practices we can and the best ways of caring for the children we can. And we avoid the appearance of evil. And so even in some of these things, some of the rules that we have, 99% of you, I'm not worried about. In fact, I would probably say 100% of the people that work with our kids, I'm fairly confident in. I know that they always say that the people that are most likely to offend are people that you trust, and so I recognize that to be true. But when I look at you guys, when I survey our list, I think, yeah, these are good people. I'm not really worried about them. But we're supposed to avoid the appearance of evil. We're supposed to ensure that whatever we're doing is not just right because we're not doing anything evil, but that it also looks right, that it looks like we're trying to be protective and safe and all those things. And we'll talk about this in a bit, but when we're doing what we're supposed to do to the best of our ability, and we're doing it the right way, then it does protect us against others leveling accusations. Okay, and I've had that happen. It happens, and so and it's something that can destroy people, false accusations. And so if we can have the best practices in place, then we protect ourselves at least somewhat from that. All right, one more verse, or two more verses actually. 1 Corinthians 14:40 says, "Let all things be done decently and in order." And that's speaking specifically about the church and how the church is to run. And so we should be trying to do our ministries decently and in order. And finally, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15, Paul writes, "But if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of truth." And so Paul is writing Timothy a letter because he wants to make sure that the church is running properly, that the people in the church are qualified and behaving properly in the church of the living God. And then it says that the church belongs to God. And so every ministry you're a part of is a ministry that's part of our church ministry, but it's a church that belongs to God. So you're not just serving the leadership of the church, right? You understand this. You're serving the Lord. And he goes on to say that the church is the pillar and the ground of truth. And so there's a way of serving that is, and behaving that is bad. But the opposite of that is not just, okay, now we're behaving good. We're supposed to behave in a way that demonstrates the church to be the pillar and the ground of truth, right? And so we should be living in a way that, and acting in a way that is true, that is right, that is just, that is holy, that is pure. So in everything we're doing in our youth ministry, that's kind of where we're striving toward. Okay, things that are right and just and pure and holy. So, with that being said, I'm going to start passing out a clipboard around, and then I'm going to pass out a stack of papers with it. Okay? Everybody needs to see this clipboard before you go. If you're here and your name is on the list, then please sign it. Sign beside your name. This is just to say that you did the training. If your name for some reason is not on the list, then I'd like you to take your name and add it to the very bottom of the list. There's a few spaces, empty spaces, and then sign beside that, okay? The second part about this list that you need to be aware of is on the right-hand side, there's not applicable, an X, or an empty space. If you have an empty space, you need to fill one of these out, okay? The empty space means either that we don't have a police check for you, or more likely that your police check is more than 2 years old. Okay, if your police check is more than 2 years old, we're going to get them updated. That was crazy. We have somebody, a man in our church that works for the OPP that's willing to do that for us. And so if we can get these filled out, and ideally filled out today, before you leave, there's a box of pens that are on the filing cabinet at the back. Maybe that should go out with these. And you can be filling this out and finish it by the time you're done, so it won't take you extra time. So if there is a blank space, you need one. If you have an X or not applicable, then that means you don't need one, okay? Make sure you sign your name beside you. There's 3 pages, so if you're on the first page, it's okay.
I help in the morning.
Yes, you do. That's right. Good for you.
How do you know?
Because I've seen you in here with Miss in junior church when I come pick up the kids. Yeah. Okay. So here's the general protection guidelines. What I want to do is we'll probably give some general guidelines and then we'll apply them to different areas of ministry. And I have a lovely assistant who's going to help us with the nursery. You'll get to, she's much more pleasant than I am, and so you'll get time with her. Pardon? I'm recording, yeah. Yeah, it's being recorded. So if you're like, oh, this other person's not here, and now they don't have to go through it, and I have to do it, they're going to have to do it. They just won't get pizza with it. Okay? All right. So, what we'll talk about is general protection guidelines. We'll talk about abuse, what it is, and when we need to report it. We'll talk about what to do in case of emergency, and we'll give you some general reminders. And so, first of all, child protection guidelines. The rule that you need to be very aware of, that's going to guide a lot of how we act with children in our church, is just the rule of 2. Okay? The idea is you are never alone with a child. You're never alone by yourself with a closed door, with a empty car, in any situation, not at the back. I mean, you're never alone by yourself with a child. You always have at least one other worker or adult or even child there, but you're never alone, okay? Now, ideally, we want always 2 workers there, and so Tara will talk a little bit about sign-in procedures at the nursery and how that affects that. But you never want to be alone. This is for a few reasons, but one of the most important is just when we're doing that, then first of all, we're always checking our own behavior because we know we're accountable. Okay, and I know good people sometimes make that bad decisions because they get angry and the kid's being bad and they get frustrated. And so if you have somebody else there, then it's just something that's like, you're not going to do something stupid because you just got angry because they're there watching you, right? The other reason is the child can't make allegations against you that are untrue. And that is really important. I'll tell you a really quick story, but when I was a teenager, 16 years old, I worked at a kids club at my old church, and there were some kids in the bus that I always went with the driver, and the idea was that we had 2 there. And there was kids that were being super bad on the bus, and then they stole something out of the van as they were going. And so I got out of the van and I took the item from the child. Well, he was upset. It was candy. It was candy that he stole. So I took candy back from the child, and he went up inside and he told his mother that I beat him up. And it was ridiculous. We're talking about in the middle of the street with people all around, and so but. This mother calls, and I was very thankful that I had the bus driver to say, no, that's actually not at all what happened. Okay, and so it didn't go anywhere from there because I had an adult that was a witness that could say this is actually what happened. The kid was just mad because he got his candy taken away. All right, so it's important. So that includes vehicles, classrooms, washrooms, and even I'm going to caution you with phone calls and texting and Facebook and all those things, because yes, you're not technically in the same room as that person, but if you're, and especially we're dealing with the opposite sex, and I'm thinking older kids now, if you're having a lot of social contact with one person of the opposite sex that not anybody else knows about, that's problematic, even if it's just friendly, okay? Because it can be interpreted by the other person the wrong way, and it still looks like we're hiding something, right? If you are having conversations with somebody of the opposite sex on a regular basis, not just like hey, youth's this day or whatever, but you should be very cautious of that, okay? Tara she constantly looks at my phone. She constantly knows. So make sure that you have other people holding you accountable in all those areas, okay? What's funny about that? Oh, she's a little crazy. She's not. No, it's a good thing. Okay, so washrooms, let children go by themselves. So obviously we're dealing with all different age groups here, but when you have kids that are able to go by themselves, best to just kind of stand by the door and let them go by themselves. Have your door open so that the door of the bathroom is still open. So in the toddler room, for example, you would allow a child to go in, stand by the door, the bathroom door is still open, but then the other leader can still see you, and you can still be somewhat monitoring what the child's doing, right? It's just not feasible for you to send 2 adults into the bathroom while all the other kids play in the toddler room. So that's the best way to do that. So in every situation, look for a way where you have another adult with eyes on you, and you can still then be watching the child. Okay? All right, so washrooms, just additionally to that, I think boys with boys, girls with girls is better. Whenever possible, let's have male leaders working with boys and female leaders working with girls, okay? So that's the rule of 2. Discipline, okay? Obviously, kids are not always well behaved. They're going to cause you problems, especially when you get them all together, being rambunctious, playing games, singing songs. I mean, it's always going to happen. So we need to know how we're allowed to discipline them or what we're allowed to do. And the first thing, and the thing I want to get to across to you in very bold letters, is no corporal punishment. Okay? You are never allowed to use physical punishment against the child that's not yours. Okay? And don't use physical punishment against a child that is yours while you're in the nursery or while you're in the toddler class with them, because it just looks really bad. Okay? So no corporal punishment ever. So that means no grabbing their arm in a way that could potentially hurt them. Okay? The only thing I can see being possible is if a child is not going somewhere, you can kind of, move this way. You know what I mean? But you're not doing anything that either the child, Miles is funny, okay? He gets hurt. He seems to get hurt a lot, okay? So there are times that I barely touch him. Ow! Okay? Now Miles, I know Miles, and I know that's how it works. And but there are other kids that do that, and if somebody sees that happening with you, so just don't even wrap your hand around their arm to lead them, right? Be very careful. No corporal punishment at all. No hitting, no grabbing, no shoving, no belittling or calling names, okay? Not even under your breath, because they might hear. If you wouldn't want the kids to do it to one another, then don't do it to them, okay? The truth is, few people plan to be abusive when working with children, okay? You don't sign up for the most part, you don't sign up for nursery to be physically abusive to children. But the time that it happens is just when you're so frustrated and they've been so bad for so long, and that's when this is important to remember, that you got to be just above and beyond reproach here, okay? No belittling. And I said, you can't yell at them, right? You can't scream at kids, okay? Now, you might do that at your house, and that's probably not great, but for sure at the church. And don't yell at your own kids at the church when they're in the nursery, because it just looks bad. Another parent comes for the first time, drops their kid off the nursery, and we have a mom in there that's yelling at her kid. Well, the parent coming for the first time doesn't know it's their kid, and so there are better ways to deal with it. Okay, we'll talk about some of those in a second. But be extremely cautious and extremely patient. So how do we discipline? First of all, loving but stern correction. Okay, you can use a stern voice without being a screaming voice. So there's a voice that says, I'm very serious about what I'm saying, and it's not even a raised voice. It's just a very serious voice. So you can use that. Reinforce positive behavior. So when you see something good, a lot of times, kids respond well to that, especially if they don't know you very well. How to handle problem behavior. You can explain the problem, okay? So you can say, listen, Johnny, this is what's happening. You're not allowed to take blocks and throw them at Tommy's head, okay? Because it could hurt Tommy. We don't want to hurt Tommy in the nursery. So how about we do this and then find a place that they can throw blocks, okay? Now, this is important because you probably heard a lot of modern day parenting that says what you do rather than correcting behavior is you just redirect behavior, right? And I don't agree with that completely, because I think just redirecting behavior is never actually recognizing there's a problem in the first place. So I think recognizing that there's a problem and then saying, let's find something that you can do is good. You're kind of taking both steps, okay? And so redirect to positive actions and then explain consequences. So have them know that, listen, I will be going to get your parents if you keep throwing blocks at Tommy's head. Okay, that's probably your best recourse. Now, some kids don't care if you go get their parents, and we don't want going to get their parents to be like the very first thing that you do. But at least if you have to get their parents, it deals with the problem for that week. Tara.
I'm just wondering if for nursery, like if a child just isn't listening at all, can you put them on a time?
Yeah, that's my next point is if the behavior continues, and then I say time ends in brackets with time out also there. Okay, so if the behavior continues, maybe even before you go get the parents, one of the things that you can do is time ins or time outs, depending on how you define each of those things. And so there are some rules. The reason I say time ins is because there are actually some rules with how you're allowed to do a time out with kids. So the kid can't be like put in a dark room all by themselves. Okay, you can't separate them from everybody else as part of the punishment. You can have a chair that's facing everybody else and say, listen, you need to sit on this chair until, for 5 minutes or whatever, until you're calmed down and we think that you're going to behave properly. You can do those types of things. You can't do something that is belittling to a child. So you can't say you have to go on your knees and have your nose on the ground. Okay, the kid's sitting there in front of all his friends, and it's embarrassing. It's belittling. So in your correction, it should never embarrass the child. Okay, it's not embarrassing to sit in a chair watching everybody else, but it is kind of frustrating that you can't play, and that's okay. There is a consequence, okay? But you can't do something that's going to embarrass them. Okay, does anyone have questions about that? I didn't say this at the start, but if you have questions as we go, please ask. Roger?
If the child is being disruptive, and that's what is being, the tutor is given a time out, and I'm sitting in the chair by himself.
Yep.
Okay, and the child then refuses to go sit on the chair.
Yep.
Go back to leading them, which would mean, grabbing them by the hand and leading them to the chair, which is a no-no.
Right.
Then would that constitute going to bring it to the parents?
I think so, yeah. It's at that point when the child will not go along with the correction that's trying to be handed out, or the discipline that's trying to out. If you can't correct them, if you can't discipline them in the right way, then you need to get their parents. Okay, we don't resort to another way that hopefully is right. Okay, Justin?
How do you deal with an abusive child, kid that wants to hit you or other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that certainly you can stop them. Okay, so you don't have to take a kid beating on you just because you're worried about. But I think you do that. What I would do is I would probably call another adult over so that they could be very so that that particular situation had two eyes on it the whole time, and then I would try and stop them. Yeah, you can reason with them. But at this point, if a child is being, we saw a child a few weeks ago that he would literally just kick and spit and punch and do whatever he could to another child or to the person trying to stop them. I think at that point you try and stop his arms and his legs from being able to do that, and then have another adult that's there with you, and then get the child's parents and have them remove the child.
What if the child's parents aren't there?
Then the child probably shouldn't be there. Then whoever brought them there, you get them.
But like kids club.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so at Kids Club, one of the things that we will probably want to do is make sure that wherever we are, we have a way to contact parents, because in the case of emergency, we would want to do that anyway. And so if you had the parent's cell phone, that might be the time to give them a call and say, hey, listen, you need to come back. But you will have a period of time, and it's possible you won't be able to get hold of them. I think then we've got to do our best to be able to keep the child in the room with, but away from the other kids. And in my experience, at least with the kids that are punching kicking, after a couple minutes they tire down and they stop. And so they'll be upset about it for a while, but Justin?
So would it be better actually in that type of situation to always have a woman deal with having physical contact with someone? Right?
Definitely if it's a girl, but usually that's dealing with a boy. Part of me wonders that a little boy might respond better to a man who is, not certainly like the entire time you have to be loving and kind and speaking in a soft voice. You can't be like meeting them where they're at, right? You've got to show that you're in complete control and that you're right. But yeah, I don't think it has to be a woman when it's a little boy. We have a serious problem in Kids Club. Michelle?
No, I don't know if this helps, but obviously doing foster care, we have to take the kids to training, and this question was brought up. And for kids that behave like that, we're allowed to block ourselves from getting hurt. We can't hit that, but we can block ourselves.
Right.
And also, if it's out of control, we are allowed to hold them over a lap and just hold them until they are able to calm down.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah. So you can restrain them from doing damage to yourself or others. I think.
And they said if they're hurting other people or they're hurting themselves, you can do it.
Yep. Okay. Good to know. Okay. So that's everybody good with that answer then? Yes.
To try to diffuse what's going on is distract them somehow to get out of this mood or mode that they're in. And it can be done by asking a question that has nothing to do with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Then get them into a conversation. If you know that they like trucks and toys or dolls or that, bring up something like that. And sometimes just distracting them in a way that it pulls them out of this mode that they're in.
Yeah.
And I'll take a child if he's disruptive, I'll just say, hey, would you walk around with me?
Yeah.
And I'll take his hand and just walk around here, and I can still teach and do what I can, holding this kid's hand. And he's preoccupied. He's wondering, where are we going? Or what are we, it distracts.
Yeah. I've seen you do that, and it works well with my kids too many times. Right?
Actually, what's scary is when out of the blue, a kid will just bite an innocent kid
Yep.
and hurt him, like legitimately hurt him, and that's...
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, and that's something that we're not responsible for, and we can't stop the initial thing from happening.
Especially when it happens like in a second
Yep.
when it's like
Yep.
nothing provoked it or nothing, you weren't expecting them to do
Yep.
that.
I can speak. I have my little boy. He bites sometimes. my other child. Normally, when I find he does it is when he has extreme emotions. He's really happy and he's trying to show it, or he's really mad and he's trying to show it. A lot of times it'll be. I found with mine, it's an extreme emotion he just doesn't know how to handle. So sometimes, when he bites her, it's because she's hugging him and he just wants to hug her so hard that he bites her.
They grow out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Brian, I don't think, I think parents that drop their kids off, when another child bites them, they won't just automatically assume that the nursery workers did something wrong. I think that parents recognize that kids bite sometimes, and their kid has probably bitten somebody, and they'll probably get bitten once or twice in nursery if they ever do that. And that's just one of the dangers of putting your kid in nursery. However, just a second, Melissa. I think that how we respond to that's important. And so we respond in a calm way, but make sure you don't just let it continue or let the kid off with just a quick warning. Like, take them aside, talk to them. Yeah. And then you talk to parents.
So the parent coming to get their kid and maybe say, to pick up any bleeding.
Yep. And that brings up a good point. I think we're going to get to it in a little bit, but since we're there, if a child is hurt, then if they're hurt to the point where it's clear they need, like, they're seriously hurt, then immediately get their parents and call emergency services if necessary. Don't think that you have to go through Pastor or I or one of the elders before you call an ambulance, okay? Just clearly, if somebody's really hurt. If a child hurts themselves, but it looks like they're going to be okay, it's just a regular bump or bruise or a tiny little scrape, the kid isn't out of control, then you can take care of whatever, like putting the Band-Aid on or whatever medical attention they need, and they'll be fine. So if the bite is very serious, Brian, then I would say get the parents immediately so that they don't arrive to a kid who's seriously hurt. It's better to get them right away and so they know that this just happened and we're trying to deal with the situation. But if it's just a little thing, then the kid stops crying within a minute or so, then it's fine. Melissa?
I was someone who used to bite and got opposed to it.
Yep.
Bite.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one lady was at 5, and this person was never told or explained to them how to show emotions. And they were really upset or really bored or really anything.
Yeah.
They couldn't express it. They just would bite.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what Nelly's saying, but yeah, absolutely. Tara?
Well, now that you're talking about it, the emergency contact list is on the nursery bulletin.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, so what we've done is we've contacted everybody that we can and figured out who has CPR and first aid training. And so if something happens that's serious, then you have a list of people in the nursery that you can go to immediately. So any of those people are up to date, certified. And then there are a few people, I think, at the top that have stars beside them. And those people are actually current nurses and they have extensive first aid training. And so they would be the first people to find, but the other ones are good too. Good. Anybody else? Appropriate touching versus inappropriate touching. This is something good for us to all know what is okay and what's not okay. All right? So I think we recognize that there are places on boys and girls that you should never touch. Now, obviously, changing diapers in the nursery, I think you get a check mark that's from their parents that says that that's okay. And usually have ladies that take care of that. Okay? But above the diaper changing stage, then no problems in that area are ever dealt with by you. So if it hurts or something like that, get the parents, okay? Anytime, get the parents. You are able to show affection to kids. So it is reasonable to have a brief hug with the child, Okay, that's okay. Mr. Manning said he holds, now he's holding a child's hand walking around the class. That's okay. If you were like in the back field holding a child's hand, it might be, maybe the child is older, then it'd be weird, okay? So there is some common sense that has to play a part in all of this, right? But does anybody have any questions about what is appropriate and what's not? So I would refrain from kissing. Don't ask for affection. Okay, so if you're trying to get a child to show you affection that the child's not naturally showing you, then don't do that. Usually, if I would say that if there's a little girl who's like 3 or 4 years old or older, I try to not ever allow them to sit on my lap. I just think, as a guy, it's okay. As a girl, it would be fine if there was girls sitting on a woman's lap. That's great. But just like common sense like that, okay? Snacks. Tara, are you going to cover snacks? Okay, so just for the older groups, we are a nut-free church, so we're trying to take that seriously. We do have kids in our church that are allergic, and so this is one of those things that you don't just want to be reading the labels after and hoping that there was nothing in it. This is something you actually have to pay attention to beforehand, okay? So check packaging before snacks are opened, especially with the kids club, and we make sure that all the candy that goes over there is all nut-free. So be aware of that. And now I think Tara's going to get a little bit more specific in talking about issues that have to do with nursery. And so, Tara, you can do your thing, and then I have a few more things to say when that's done. But you get a little reprieve from me, so please enjoy it.
For nursery workers, we would like them to be in the nursery, especially the sign-in people, at least 15 minutes early. At least 10 minutes early, but 15 minutes would be the best because we would like to have a nursery open at least 15 minutes before the services. And the one thing is you cannot sign somebody in until you have at least 2 workers present. So that really presents a big problem with the sign-in person does show up 15 minutes early, but then nobody shows up till right before, then it would be a big problem. So if you can get there at least 10 minutes early and 15 minutes for sure for the people who are signing in. Right now we have a few couples who are going to be doing some sign-in and stuff, so that might be easier just because you have at least the 2 of you are showing up at the same time. So I don't know, on the schedule, you'll see there's a person in red and a person in blue now. So the person in red, I think, is the person who's doing the sign-in. And if you are that person, then it's your responsibility to make sure you talk to the parents. You make sure that they've signed all the whole sheet, the sign-in sheet, and especially for the diapers, because if they do not sign that you can change their diaper, then you can't change their diaper. So, and then allergies. Some kids, we have peanut-free stuff in the nursery, but a lot of kids now are, they can't eat wheat or they can't eat other different things like that. So you need to be talking to the parents, making sure you get as much information down as possible so that you know what's going on with that child when they're in the nursery. And if there's a new person who has never been before, these are a sheet that it's in this binder here, and they should be filling this sheet out if they're new, okay? And then we also have a handout sheet, just information on the nursery that a new person should also receive, okay? And that's it. And then you guys, most people already know about the tags. You get a tag that goes on the child's back, and if you want to give one to the parents, you can give one to the parents. And then you can get that back when the person comes. Yep.
Yeah, but at night that's not done.
Yeah.
Just in the morning.
Well, it should still be done at night. Sometimes there's some older kids that maybe at night. It should be done. You should still sign people in and sign people in the proper way and have one person out there signing people in to make sure you know what's going on. Okay, and then a few other things are no one else but the sign-in person should be at that counter. So, and all the other workers should be in the rooms, and so the sign-in person can pass the child into one of the rooms, and there's a worker in that room. If there's workers standing outside, then there's the counter. They're start talking to people, and it's kind of hard for a child even just to enter the nursery when there's all these big adults standing in front of the door. So if just the sign-in person is back behind the counter and they are passing the kids into the nursery. And then the same thing for when you're signing out. So when the church is over, the sign-in person should be out there right away, because I know some parents they want to get their kid right away, and so it's really annoying when they're all still in the door and nobody's ready for them. So if the sign-in person is out there right away, and the same thing, if the workers can stay in the room and be ready to pass children out and have their shoes on and stuff like that, and then that sign-in person will give the child back to the parent. And that way, it's the same person. They know that child was dropped off. They know that they've got the tags. Same person giving their child back to them. Okay. What? Anything else? Oh yeah, no other workers, because it's kind of chaotic there at the end. Okay, so this is another thing we have this from the last time, that parents who are not nursery workers or are not scheduled for that time should not be entering the nursery at all, just to keep the traffic down and there's no confusion. It's to maintain order and provide security. Sometimes kids often start crying, especially new parents, and so I think that it's probably okay if you can let a new parent in if their child is really upset and they just want to get used to the nursery. But for the majority of the time, we have to try to keep that closed. So if you think that it would help a child if their parent came in just for the first little while, then you guys can probably do that. Okay. Keep the nursery door closed. A lot of times too, parents might come in or other nursery workers might come in that aren't actually scheduled, and that just creates the child starts crying, and it's utter chaos again because just one person walked into the nursery when they shouldn't have. Okay. Bathroom as well. No other child should be going to that bathroom, or adult should be going to the nursery bathroom to use the bathroom. It's only for the nursery workers that are in there and for the children. And then another thing is a male should never change a diaper or take a child to the washroom. So they don't change diapers and they don't take kids to the bathroom. And then you should always have that bathroom door open. Okay? Snacks. We used to have the people brought in their own snacks, but now just due to allergies, we don't do that anymore. So we have our own snacks. So if somebody brings a snack, just let them know that we have our own snacks and we're not able to bring in any extra snacks. Okay? But so make sure that you do. We try to have a few other ones. I know there's some rice crackers in there too, so for people who can't eat the wheat and stuff like that. We try to have stuff for everybody. Another thing to remember is no cell phones. So if you can leave your cell phones at the counter or put away so you're not tempted, but we don't want any cell phones in the nursery. I think eventually we might do some kind of cell phone thing where we can text the parent in the service. We'll have a cell phone
dedicated to the nursery.
Yeah.
That is just for contacting parents if they need to be contacted. So you get the parent's cell phone number to start.
Yep. Okay. And then another thing is we have this list in there, and Mary is the one who's going to be taking care of making sure the nursery is stocked with the snacks or diapers and wipes. So if there is anything that you really notice that we really are in need of, you can write it on this, and that will be posted. I'll try to get that posted right where the snacks are located. So you can write that on the sheet. If you use the last diaper or they're running low, write it down, and hopefully Mary will get that done. Okay, the same with injury. We already kind of talked about that, but the first aid list is by the nursery, so you guys can take a look at that. Okay, no sick kids. So I know sometimes during the winter, there's always snotty noses, but if the child does seem to be very sick in some way, it does say that on the list that the information sheet that the parent will get, But if there is a really sick kid, you should talk to the parent and not let them in, just because it just will make the rest of the kids sick, and everybody hates that their kids get sick every Monday, you know? So it's a really awkward thing to do, I'm sure, but if you can just try to be bold in that area. And do it in a nice way, obviously. Okay, and then cleaning up. Clean up as much as possible at the end of the nursery, and also make sure, like, if you notice the blocks go in a certain area, you know, the food goes in a certain area, so try to keep them going back in the same area, okay, because that helps with other people when they're tidying it up. And then the garbage. She mentioned taking emptying the garbage and the diapers at the end of nursery, if you're able to do that, and then hand washing before snacks with the wipes, and wiping the tables down with the Lysol wipes before snack. Okay, and I think that's all there is. That is it. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Oh, the tags. I was going to bring one. The tags are to go. It's annoying. But on this sign-in sheet, they have the pictures on the side, and so there's a tag that goes with each picture. So the child will get one on their back, just tagged to their back, and the parent will also receive one. And then on the bottom, like underneath the counter, we have these tags in like little cubbies, and their diaper bag will go into that cubby. Okay, that corresponds with the tag.
Do they all get the tags though, or they all get the tags?
They will all get a tag.
So when a parent comes back, all they have to do is hand you their tag.
Like
and then
the
you know
lion.
what diaper bag is theirs and what child is theirs. Mm-hmm. And we shouldn't be handing people that bring lions back. We shouldn't be giving them monkeys, right? Try and give the lion to the lion. The good thing about that, especially if it's new parents, is that you don't know who the parents are. And so as soon as you see them have the tag, you know that, yes, this is the person that dropped them off so they can pick them up. Otherwise, you're just handing them to a stranger and hoping it's their parents, right? So it's really important, especially with new parents.
Yes, it is very important. Also helps when you're in the nursery and you are checking for snacks and stuff. You want to make sure that child can have that snack. You know that tag is on that child, and that's where it says that person can't have a snack. So it is really important that this gets done. And a Sunday night, it should also be done. So just make sure that happens. Any other questions?
So just kind of going along with that, parents, it's helpful if you attempt to pick up your kids in a timely fashion, because nursery workers have all of these things they have to do and clean up and tidy up when their shift is done, and so we don't want to keep them longer than we have to.
Dan?
Yep.
I think when you tell somebody, your child is sick and we don't want them here, I think you should have more than just one person handle that.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be awkward for, because you're going to hear, well, she don't like me or something like that, but two people come.
Yeah.
I think it'd be better than,
yeah, absolutely.
We have our policies. Here.
Yeah, we need to recognize that in that event, it's going to be something that is very difficult for the parent. It might be something that is like, then I don't want to be here kind of thing for the parent. So it's got to be pretty obvious and pretty serious in order to do it. And I think you're right. Having two people do it is probably much smarter.
Would it help, like, you now have that board behind it, would it help to have maybe something kind of big?
Yep.
Almost like kids?
Yep.
We could do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If it's there, then you could be,
Yep,
sure.
sure.
A sick kid with an extra.
Okay, sorry, one more thing. This is like an email list for all the people in nursery. You need to find your own replacement. So if you're not going to be there that week, then you need to email somebody or get in contact with somebody and change your own people around, so that like you're not just contacting Keely or someone else and just saying, hey, I'm not going to be there, so find somebody. But you are responsible for finding your own replacement, okay? And we also have a few extra people. I know Natalie right now is going to be on that, and Alyssa, and I think Daniela. I don't want you guys always calling them, but they are also going to be backups for the next little while. Okay?
Good. Thank you, Tara. Great job. Okay, changing gears a little bit. Quickly working with teenagers, some things that are just very specific to teenagers. Remember that all of the same rules and laws that apply to kids still apply to teenagers. So it's kind of a unique situation because you're dealing with individuals who at some points act like adults and they kind of want to be adults, but you still have to be very careful with them. So a few things to remember with them. Be careful what you say. Okay, they're able to take it the wrong way, and you've probably seen or heard teenagers do that. You probably did this when you were a teenager, but you take something that's said and you take it the wrong way and you tell the world about it. And so they can really tarnish your reputation just by one thing that you said that maybe wasn't well said, it wasn't carefully said, but certainly you didn't mean it in the way that they took it. So be very careful what you say. They're very, very sensitive and very willing. They don't understand the consequences for your life when they say something negative about you, right? It's not going through their head. And so they are very impressionable and very sensitive. And a lot of times you'll say things, and I know I've done this before, you say things to them and you didn't think it was really that hurtful, but the thing that they thought of for the next week or month of their life was just your words going through their head. So be very sensitive and careful with your words. Be careful with how you act. Don't do anything that would cause them to be suspicious or to be flattered. Okay? Be careful. You want to be kind, but there's a right way of being kind, and there's a way of being kind that could just accidentally send wrong messages. And so be careful, especially when being kind to the opposite sex. Don't behave in a way that you would not want them to behave. Okay, so this is another thing to remember with teenagers specifically, is that they're watching your life. And so if you're driving in some kind of exercise with them and you have a group of teenagers in your car, then as soon as you speed or go around a corner way too fast, they think that that's how that you should drive. They think it's the cool thing to do and the right thing to do, and we got to be very careful that we're not behaving in a way that they're going to see us doing it and then want to do it to a fuller extent. All right? You might be able to drive like that. Some of you can drive very well, but don't do it when the teens are in the car. All right? Don't embarrass them. Okay? One of the things that I've always tried to do with our youth group is I've tried to be very careful not to do activities that required a great deal of embarrassment for kids. Okay? And there are sometimes that, like we do an activity and they have to get outside of themselves, where they have to be kind to someone that they would usually not talk to, and that's okay. But I would never try and do something specifically to a teen that would embarrass them. Okay, so that's probably true for all kids. Okay, be careful with the attention you give and how much attention you're giving and for how long and to whom. And the rule of two still applies, and so make sure you're not just having these off in the corner one-on-one conversations with people in the youth group, okay? Anybody got any questions about that? Just wanted you to realize that this training it really is good for everybody, and we need to make sure that even with our teens we're being careful because, like I said, they act older and they are older and they're maturing, but we have to be very careful, especially the law is absolutely on their side, and it should be, but we need to make sure that we're above reproach. Okay, last thing I want to talk about here is abuse. Okay, there are many kinds of abuse: physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, sexual abuse. And it's good for us to remember that when it comes to these things, there is no profile of an abuse offender. There's not, we can't just take, okay, here's abuse offender, see they fit into the same profile as everyone else. That's not true. They come in all shapes and all sizes. Some people that seem very nice and very kind can be abusive. I heard a quote that said, if abuse occurs in a church, a respected member will most likely be the molester. Okay, so that's something to be aware of. And that was from an insurance company. So it's not this stranger danger kind of mentality. It's this let's be careful all the time type of mentality. That doesn't mean you're skeptical of every person every time they walk in. You got your eye on them like that. But it's just, let's be aware, right? So churches are very susceptible because we are naturally trusting, we're unsuspecting, and we are almost always in desperate need of volunteers. And so that just makes us susceptible, so we need to be very careful. As far as this is concerned, we have a great responsibility as a church to report abuse if we believe it's occurring. Okay? Now, you are legally responsible to report abuse if abuse is occurring. The law says any person who has reasonable and probable grounds to believe and believes that a child is in need of protective services shall forthwith report the matter to the local police authorities for intervention. Those of you who work with children are in the front line in defending their right to grow up in a caring environment. Your early and supportive intervention can prevent child abuse and further family dysfunction. So, if you believe that there's a child that you're caring for in the nursery that is suffering from abuse from their family, you are legally responsible to report it. Okay? In the past, what we've done, we've said like, okay, maybe you should just talk to somebody in leadership. That's probably not the best advice. Okay? Now, like, we don't want everybody ratting out everybody else all the time. So clearly, it says you need to have a reasonable, probable grounds to believe and believe. So you need to be pretty sure that this is going on. But if you're pretty sure you have reasonable and probable grounds to believe it, then you need to report it. So you report it to police, report to CAS. Okay? And I would then recommend and ask that you report it to the leadership of the church. Okay?
When I worked at the youth center, one thing that we did was like if something happened, then I would go to like the head, like the director, and then together we would take it to the police. So we're going on our own.
Yep.
And then,
well, if you wanted to do it that way, that would be fine. Okay. What I don't want to happen, what my fear is that you're going to hear that I want you to come to the leadership first because then we'll determine whether you're right or wrong. And it's really not up to us. You're legally responsible. It's not us. So don't, we don't want you to foist the legal responsibility on us. But if you were asking us to go with you, then we would be glad to kind of walk you through that. But
situation that you kind of would like someone to.
Yep.
Difficult, right?
Yep, it is difficult.
What happened in the Catholic Church, though, all these scandals, they'd go to the Monsignor, and it would be a dead end. It wouldn't go anywhere else. So I think if you suspect something, certainly it'd be nice to go to somebody else, but if there's no action taken, you need to go further than that.
Yep, absolutely.
Just a question, just because I've seen it actually happen in a church to someone I knew, that they had a son who was kind of being potty trained, so sometimes in nurseries, in nursery especially, that loved to go down the stairs on his bum. Just loved to, right? So he ended up getting a bruise.
Yeah.
And that person right away went to CAS.
Yep.
And it caused, a lot of trouble for that family
Sure.
instead of, so.
Yep. I think we have to figure out in our minds what is reasonable and probable. And so sometimes, it's really hard because every situation is difficult. And in any definition that's reasonable and probable, you're always going to have people that something seems reasonable and probable, but it's not the case. And so it's just impossible for us to say, you're not going to be 100% sure, right? And so if you think it's reasonable and you think it's probable, you still have to go. Unfortunately, sometimes the wrong decision will be made, and hopefully that'll be worked out by CES or by whoever before it becomes a bigger issue. It can be very troublesome for that person going through it. And I don't think reasonable probable would be just a kid has a bruise on their knee, right? That just happens. So if it's just a normal type of injury, then that's fine. If it's reoccurring injuries, especially on places that's just not really normal to get an injury, then that would be a flag that would go up in your mind. Okay? If you think abuse is taking place in the nursery, then we'd ask you to see the church leadership immediately, and we'll go and we'll report it. Okay? So if you think that somebody else is abusing somebody in the nursery, now this is very serious, then we're all over that. That is something that absolutely destroys churches. And so that doesn't, you go to the police, we'll go to the police. It's going to be taken care of immediately and with every action we can. Maple City Baptist Church will not engage in denial, minimization, or blame shifting. Okay, I want you to know that. In case of emergency, so this is from used to, now we're just in any kind of emergency. If it's a fire, then you get the children outside calmly and then go to the school across the street. Okay, so that's the course of action if there's a fire. If there's a large cut that needs medical attention, then call the ambulance, call 911 if it's necessary. We'd rather be careful that way than to let somebody bleed out or have a serious concussion and just have that not ever dealt with. Okay, certainly that's something that if it's possible, get parents first and then be ready to call. But
A designated area is very important. That
Yeah.
way we can keep track of the children if something should ever happen.
Yeah.
So if that's the designated area.
it is front of the school across the street. It's a designated area, so everybody in the church should end up over there, and we should be able to sort it all out at that time.
Were you talking about if we needed to call an ambulance or if there was kind of a more serious injury, would it still be acceptable for us to drive, like the youth, right, where the parents aren't here, would it be okay for us to drive them to the hospital instead of
I would want to get parental permission before that happened. Otherwise, I think it's better for an ambulance to take them. If a kid runs into a tree and breaks their nose or their arm, and they need to go to the hospital, and you can talk to the parents and be like, hey, okay, we'll meet you at the hospital. That would be fine, because that's not something where they're bleeding out.
Right.
But
that's what I'm thinking. Something that I would you break your break
Yeah.
arm, or that you can still have to
Yeah.
drive them to the hospital. Just
Yeah.
makes more sense than calling an ambulance, which.
Yeah, but if you can't get a hold of the parents, then it's just I think it removes any liability or was that the right decision or not? Okay.
And Nico had a concussion at school.
Yeah.
And they called the ambulance first, then called you. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah. So that's how the school dealt with it. Yeah. And I think that's reasonable. If they would have called you and then called the ambulance, in that situation, it probably would have been okay. But if they felt like that the ambulance needed to be called, then it's good that they did. Important reminders. Tara already mentioned the thing about the cell phones, but I just want to remind you that when you're serving in the church, you've decided to give that time toward whatever service it is. So it's not your time then to socialize or to text. That's not primarily what you're doing. It's not your time to study for a test or to get caught up on your work at whatever work you have. That time you're putting into the kids. And so if you're distracted, that puts an additional load on everybody else in the nursery. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the kids, and it's really not right for the parents because they feel like they're dropping the kids off in a place that they're going to be watched, and instead they're being neglected or. And so just ensure that you have that time aside, okay, to put into the kids. And I think that's all the important reminders. One change, for the month of August, we're going to try something where we run 2 morning services for 5 weeks. And then at the end of that, we'll go back to normal. And likely in a little while, we'll talk about it as a church and decide if that's something we would ever do in the future. But that will affect you in the month of August. Okay, and so the month of August, the evening nursery workers, that normal evening service, will then be at 11 a.m. and the regular one will be at 9. Okay, so just letting you know that.
Will there still be an evening service?
No, not for the month of August. Okay, and so that's something it's a kind of a trial, a test, but we don't want to do anything quickly, and we want to get feedback from the church on what they thought and how it went. Really, the big problem is, and this is like the issue all the time. So having the whole church together in one service is just an incredible thing, and it's wonderful if we can do that. But realistically, it wouldn't be possible for our church to continue to grow in size and number without building, and the money isn't there. It's not like, and so if we ever wanted to get to that point again, then we would need to do 2 services for a while and so we're trying to figure out, and we want wisdom, we want input, but this was just an idea that we thought we'd try for a little bit and see how it went. Okay, Pastor's mentioned on Wednesday before, and I think he's going to talk to the church about it next Sunday morning. But you need to be aware of that because it's going to affect those of you who serve quite a bit in August. Okay, good. Any questions? Thoughts, comments? You guys have been here for a long time, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry it's been so long. I got to tell you, as I looked over that list that we were handing out to get you to sign, I was just so amazed at how many names are on the list. That's a wonderful thing that we have that many people willing to serve kids in our church. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming to the meeting. God bless.